welcome to another episode of 10 Count. We're here at Hollywood Smoke in the city of Santa Monica. I'm Steve Kim, joined to the return of the mic, Mike Montero and Doug Fischer of Ring TV. Boys, we have some fights being scheduled. Two of the bigger subjects that we always talk about, Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez, their spring fights are set. It was March 18th from the Garden. Gennady Golovkin takes on Danny Jacobs. And then May 6th at a venue TBA, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. takes on Canelo. All right, Mike, very simply, is this a prelude to a fall showdown?
I believe it is. I actually have a lot of confidence that the right thing is going to happen for once in boxing. I think the last year and a half or so, it's been a little rough ride after the fight that we won't mention. Boxing kind of had a cloud over it, and we went through an adjustment period. I think 2017, we're going to start to get it right. I actually do think that the Canelo-Golovkin fight will happen in September. And I really love these two matchups. The Canelo-Chavez fight, there's some asterisks there that some fans are going to grovel about, but it's a good matchup as long as Chavez can make weight. We'll talk more about that later, I'm sure. But the Golovkin-Jacobs fight, that's number 1 versus number 2 in the division. And in my eyes, I know you and Ring Magazine might not agree with this, but I think this fight is for the middleweight championship of the world. You have number 1 and number 2. This is what it's all about.
Right. No, I don't disagree. I love the fight. There are people who say that Danny Jacobs isn't really worthy, or if Golovkin beats him, it doesn't matter. You already got those. And those are that's just Golovkin hate, right? Yeah. The Golovkin critics, they're either saying that he doesn't have a chance now because he doesn't have a chin, or they're going to wait until he loses, and then they'll say, well, Golovkin still hasn't beaten anybody. Whatever, you can debate it. There are people who are upset that it's on pay-per-view. You can debate whether or not it's going to be successful as a pay-per-view event, but here's a few things that are undeniable. Number 1, Danny Jacobs is the highest-rated middleweight who is willing to fight Golovkin right now. And number 2, this is a legitimate event in New York City.
Absolutely.
It's an arena event. It's an event that will sell out Madison Square Garden. They will do a very strong gate, and there will be a lot of excitement during fight week and, of course, on fight night.
Yeah, Doug, the points that you make, the night that Danny Jacobs knocked out Quillen, all I heard from a certain chorus of people was, that's the best middleweight victory of any middleweight, and that's the biggest resume-building win, including anything Gennady Golovkin has done.
Right.
So at that point, you're like, wow, Danny Jacobs has some real power, some real leverage. I guarantee you the people that are saying that this fight is not a good fight were the same people who are waiting for this fight not to happen so they could point the finger at Loeffler and then say at the same time, he needs to fight Jacobs. They negotiated their way out. They're ducking the biggest threat. It's not what I call revisionist history, but it is a version of changing the goalposts to suit your agenda. There were people who I believe who absolutely did not want this fight to come to fruition so they can go at the same tired lines of who's he fought and they can't make the big fights.
They were already starting on Twitter. You remember the negotiations for this bout were dragged along.
Had
the
to be
WBA
fair. Had to be
dragged
fair.
their feet. Right. He had to get paid. You want to complain that it's on pay-per-view. Remember, you wanted him to get paid, guys. So there's a double-edged sword there. But those guys are already starting on Twitter. And Doug, I totally agree. Right after this fight, if Jacobs pulls the upset here, well, then Golovkin was
exposed.
trash. He was exposed. Mm-hmm. If Jacobs loses, if Golovkin knocks him out, well, he lost before. He was knocked out.
Yeah.
Here's one issue no one's talking about yet, though, and I'll go ahead and be the drug testing guy.
Please do.
This was supposed to be full Vada testing. At the time that we are recording this, Danny Jacobs is not yet enrolled in Vada, and Golovkin has been for a while. The co-main, Chocolatito, and his opponent, I can't think of the last name.
From Thailand.
Yeah. They're both enrolled in Vada. Daniel Jacobs is not.
And by
what
the
happened?
way, you know what I loved is that the quote-unquote advisor for Danny Jacobs, the white guy, not Al Heyman, he flat out said, well, these Russian guys, they're very suspicious, so we did drug testing. Really? Really? How do you have the gall not to be involved in drug testing then after you're basically throwing a massive amount of shade on the other guy? Now, going to Canelo and Chavez, it's very simple. Is this just a Mexican money grab?
Yeah.
Or is it a real fight, or is it both?
I think it's both.
It's both, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, listen, it's it's an event. Wherever it lands, if it lands in Vegas, if it lands in Southern California, if it lands in Texas, forget about it. If it lands in Texas, if they fight in San Antonio or if they fight outside the Dallas area at the AT&T Stadium, they'll do more than 60,000. They'll do more than 70,000. I mean, Canelo did 50,000 fighting Liam Smith. So, I mean, obviously, it makes sense because it's the biggest all-Mexican showdown in recent memory. No, the guys aren't like
Barrera,
the future.
Morales.
It's not. They're not. It's not like great fighters, like first ballot future Hall of Famers like Barrera, Morales. But it's two guys who have, they have some crossover appeal. Chavez because of that last name. Canelo because of the way he's been brought up.
And they've been circling around each other. They've been talked about in the same sentence.
There's a lot of buildup to this, but here's the other thing. This is the biggest dude that Canelo's ever faced.
Absolutely.
And, listen, Chavez Jr. is not a legitimate top 10 contender right now, but at one time, he was a legitimate middleweight title holder, and he had a decent title reign before losing to Sergio Martinez.
But, Doug, that's the other issue, though. I actually like the fight on paper. I think one way or the other, it's going to provide action. But keep this in mind. The last time Chavez made 160 or been that low was 2012 when he fought Martinez. Mike, at 164.5, I have some serious doubts over the physical legitimacy of Chavez coming into this bout.
I agree. And here again, there's going to be a theme here with me. We're going to go back to drug testing.
Oh, no. Mike.
That's an important factor here because
it is.
You said it. Chavez hasn't weighed this low since 2012 when he fought Martinez. And for Canelo, you have a guy who's bumping up 10 pounds. He's only fought around 154, 155.
He's never weighed in more than 155 pounds.
Exactly. Now, if I'm Team Canelo, I'm not trying to make 164. I'm auditioning for the fight with Golovkin. I'm trying to make 160. I'm treating this as a middleweight fight. That would be the smart thing to do. But if you have one guy who could potentially gain 10 pounds and you have another guy draining himself more than he has in 4 years, drug testing is a big issue in this fight.
And according to Eric Gomez, there is no rehydration clause. So you can come in as a cruiserweight if you want to.
Which Chavez Jr. probably will.
Yeah.
And that might help him. I mean, Canelo's never been in there with a guy who can just manhandle. I've never seen Canelo manhandled. And if Jr. can do it, maybe he has a shot. Obviously, I favor Canelo because I think he's the more talented boxer, but he's also the more serious professional athlete. But I like the fight just based on styles and the pride that's going to be on the line.
And I think this is a perfect, again, prelude. What's that old saying? You want to make God laugh? Make plans. But let's just say this actually comes to fruition. Guys, I don't think that there is a better way to lead up to an event and to build some real momentum and public interest than Golovkin Jacobs, followed by Canelo Chavez.
I agree, and I think that Canelo Chavez will do at least 500,000 pay-per-view buys. I think that possibly Triple G and Jacobs could do 250,000, somewhere in that realm, but both of these are going to be sold-out arenas. Like you were saying, Doug, if they take this show on the road with Canelo and Chavez to Texas, maybe 70,000, 80,000 fans.
And how often does that happen in North America?
Exactly.
It hasn't since what? The days of Jack Dempsey, Joe Louis. When was the last time we had this many people? Oh, the fights at maybe the Superdome back in the late 70s. Ali fought Spinks.
Right.
But one of the themes of boxing is I think you have to rebuild from the fan base. Grassroots. Got to get people back out to the arenas. Again, will both these fights be on pay-per-view? Yes. That's one of the unfortunate realities. One of the ways you rebuild a fan base is actually making tickets affordable, letting people go to the live events. Well, that's it for this edition of the 10 Count. I'm Steve Kim on behalf of Michael Montero and Doug Fischer. Goodbye, everybody.